Archaeologists and historians spend much of their careers digging through the past for answers about our ancestors and those who came before us. Sometimes they are quite literally digging through remains and ruins for any hints and clues they can find, while other times amazing discoveries turn up through more unusual methods. Either way, the clues that history has left us throughout the hundreds or even thousands of intervening years has a way of turning up in the most interesting bits and pieces. So today, we will be looking at 3 interesting archaeological discoveries and what they must tell us about the people who left them for us to find. Lost Renaissance masterpiece discovered hanging above woman's hot plate cells for $26.8 million. Sometimes things that are lost are hiding in the most unlikely of places, and occasionally they are even hiding in plain sight. This was the case with the recently discovered Renaissance artwork that had been considered lost to history. Philomene Wolff, a Parisian auctioneer, was tasked with evaluating the contents of a 90-year-old in Compilation and was immediately drawn to a small, old-looking piece of artwork that was hanging over her hot plate in the kitchen. She immediately knew that the painting, which is about 10 inches by 8 inches, was something special and suspected that it was a work of Italian Primovatism, but had no idea exactly how valuable it would turn out to be. Wolff took the painting to Eric Turkin, an art historian with a track record of identifying after a thorough analysis. Turkin and a team of experts were all able to certify without a doubt that the artist of the painting was Seni de Pipo, also known as Cimabue, who was one of the highly celebrated fathers of early Renaissance painting dating back to the 13th century. Cimabue's paintings are incredibly rare, despite being considered a master of medieval painting, and historians only know of 11 of his paintings that currently exist, making this find even more impressive. Art historians were able to identify the painting as Christ Mocked, a part of a diptych of 8 scenes depicting the Passion and Crucifixion of Christ, likely as part of an altar scene that was separated and sold in the 18th century. Although prior to the discovery of Christ Mocked, there were only 2 known panels from the diptych in existence called the Virgin and Child with 2 angels and the Flagellation of Christ. This new discovery was able to be identified as a member of the set by looking at the wood grain that was consistent throughout all 3 pieces. Jerome Moncucul, a part of the team that made the exciting identification, said that they were able to positively determine that the painting was not a clever copy by comparing the wood grain between the sets. They are all made with the same technique on the same wood panel, so you can follow the grain of the wood through the different scenes, he reported. He also used infrared light to be sure the painting was done by the same hand. You can even see the corrections he made. Although there are only 11 known works by Cimabue in existence, historians speculate the altarpiece that Christ Mocked was originally a part of contained 8 panels, meaning that there could be 5 additional panel pieces left for discovery. The owner of the apartment where the painting was unknowingly hidden away was elderly and moving out of her apartment. She had no idea that she had an incredibly rare and valuable artwork in her kitchen. She told reporters that she had thought it was a Greek icon painting and that it had been in her family for as long as she could remember. Despite having been hung over a hot plate used to cook food for all those years, experts reported that the painting is still in excellent condition, apart from minor accumulation of dust. Considering the fact that the painting was made around it is truly impressive that it was able to remain in such good condition for all this time, and reminds us that you never know what might be lying in wait in some nondescript place for the right person to come along and uncover it. Vampire's remains were found 30 years ago. DNA reveals who he was. Some archaeological finds only begin to make sense much after their initial discoveries, as we are able to apply new technologies in the quest to understand the past. The mysterious remains found in Griswold, Connecticut are one such case. In 1990, some children playing on the outskirts of the town stumbled across a long-forgotten family cemetery that dated back to the 19th century. There were 4 graves still intact, and these were immediately exhumed for study by archaeologists. However, the 4th grave is what caught their eye. The body had been arranged with the skull and femurs placed into a skull and crossbones pattern on top of the other bones, indicating that the man had been suspected of being a vampire in life, and his bones had been rearranged sometime after his burial to prevent him and supposedly terrorizing the townspeople. although the only identifying information on the grave was JB55 spelled out in small nails on the lid, likely indicating initials and age at death. Researchers were able to conclude that this supposed vampire was a laborer who had indeed died at around 55 years old, probably from tuberculosis. It was not until July 2019 when a team of scientists announced the results of a DNA test on the vampire that the man's identity was revealed. The DNA was matched to the Barber family, and the man was determined to be John Barber. Barber was likely a victim of the New England vampire panic in the 19th century when breakouts of tuberculosis were frequently thought to be spread by vampires. The only way to determine if a suspected victim of tuberculosis was indeed one of the vampires was to dig up the grave and look for signs, such as inexplicable preservation of the body, a bloated abdomen, or apparent growth of the hair and nails. We now know that these are common signs of decomposition in improperly preserved bodies, but the townspeople of John Barber's time believed that it confirmed that he was a vampire responsible for the spread of consumption in the town. They removed his head and crossed his femurs over his chest, broke open his ribs, and removed what was left of his decomposing organs, which they then cremated to feed his supposed victims to cure them of his curse. Luckily for John Barber, we now understand the science behind death and disease, and are able to give him the proper, respectful burial that he deserves. Oldest DNA from Africa offers clues to mysterious ancient culture. Some things that can leave clues to the past are much smaller than artifacts. In fact, one of the most informative relics is DNA. And as one of the oldest cemeteries in the world, having existed for 15,000 years, the Gros de Pigeon Cemetery in Morocco stands to hold quite a bit of information about the past in the form of these microscopic double helixes. Inside these caves, mysterious civilizations buried their dead sitting up, adorned with animal horns and homemade beads. Before DNA testing was an option, scientists based their assumptions about the origins of that culture on the sophisticated weapons and arrowheads that were also found in the caves, leading them to believe that the people who lived there might have been part of a surprisingly advanced set of Europeans that migrated to North Africa much earlier than this exposure had previously been thought to have happened. Because some European Stone Age cultures had developed similar weapons during this same time frame. Although of mysterious origin, there was no doubt that this Stone Age civilization was highly advanced and had developed microlith blades that were more deadly and efficient than the primitive stones that other nearby people were using. For lack of more information, historians and archaeologists called these people the Ibera Marusians, hypothesizing that they must have been related to the people on the Iberian Peninsula, and that these people had migrated across North Africa and spread across the areas of Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia and the Mediterranean Sea. However, recently, scientists were able to gather samples of DNA from some samples of inner ear bones that were recovered and sequenced the ancestry of the people buried there, and what they found surprised them. The DNA results were published in a report that revealed that the people of the Grande Pigeon had no genetic link to southern Europe, and were instead closely linked to the Natufian culture that would later appear in the Middle East. The Natufians and the Iberomeridians likely shared common ancestors through migration from North Africa and the Middle East, with about 1/3 of their DNA matching those of sub-Saharan Africans, meaning that the mysterious and advanced cave people of Morocco had indeed highly likely developed these technologies without influence from the rest of the world. This discovery has allowed historians and archaeologists to better understand the migration of peoples and cultures within Africa. Before the Iberomerisian DNA was sequenced, there had been no viable DNA uncovered from before the introduction of agriculture, and we were forced to simply make our best guesses about how people mixed and traveled. What do you make of these 3 uncovered discoveries? Muhammad Ali has gone down in history as being one of the greatest boxers of all time. His achievements in boxing would pave the way for future champions and inspire millions. His unique personality was only matched by his incredible skill in the ring. Many heavyweight champions regard him as the greatest boxer of all time, saying that he wasn't someone who had to work on his skill, but rather he was born with an incredible gift. He fought in the Olympics and would go on to become a world champion boxer. Ali stood at over 6 foot and had a unique fighting style, relying heavily on his quick footwork and being able to avoid punches at close range. Couple this with his incredible speed and accuracy, and in his prime he was untouchable. Muhammad Ali also spoke up on many political issues during his time. This included his name being changed from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, refusing to enter the military. Just before Ali's fight with George Foreman in 1974, he said the iconic quote, "Floats like a butterfly, stings like a bee, his hands can't hit what his eyes can't see." However, there was a side to Muhammad Ali that many people weren't aware of. He even tried to openly talk about it on The Tonight Show back in 1973, but the host and even the audience just laughed at him. This was the subject of UFOs. Muhammad Ali has started talking about the subject during the interview, something that the crowd thought was a joke. However, during this interesting interview, he goes on to talk about the topic for 3 minutes. It's important to note that during the 1970s, if somebody openly talked about UFOs, they were branded as crazy. The topic was definitely in its darker days, with people who came forward with their encounters being immediately debunked or called a liar. Ali had talked about his encounters with these mysterious crowds, even going on to say that during his lifetime he had encountered around 16 UFOs. During The Tonight Show, he was meant to be promoting his rematch with heavyweight champion Ken Norton, but as mentioned, the conversation took a different turn. Before he talks about the topic, the host notices that something is playing on the box's mind and that he seems to be a little troubled. This is when Ali opens up and says the following, "I've been studying UFOs. Did you know these UFOs are unidentified flying objects flying around above us? I'm serious, they've sighted a bunch above Georgia. I've seen them at night. They have real photos of them. The government knows about them, but the people don't seem to talk about them. I have moving photographs of these sources that people took, and I'm surprised that people don't talk about them." The talk show host then goes on to mock Muhammad Ali while he's trying to talk about this topic, or while the audience is laughing at him. You can tell that he was someone who'd looked into this topic and researched the various sightings that had been happening around that time. The host then goes on to say that what people were photographing and seeing were most likely satellites. Muhammad Ali then responds by saying the following, "No, these crafts were 50 feet above the highway. They call it swamp gas. They don't know what they are. I think I know what they are. They are sources and objects coming into our atmosphere flying around, and people got pictures of them. They are sighted in many cities. They're red, green, and blue lines, but authorities brush it off like we're mental." Funny enough, after he says this, the host then asks why they don't land and come and say hi, to which Ali responds that they can't get no sense out of the people here. The audience then cheers, but Ali sits there with a serious expression on his face. He then details that he has photographs and moving films of his mysterious, unidentified flying objects. Those who have watched the interview have said it's bizarre how the interviewer tries to debunk everything that Muhammad Ali says. At another point in the interview, Ali says he was able to catch one of these crafts moving around in the sky, to which the host replies that it could be a motion picture. Ali's expression after this seems to be a mixture of frustration and sadness. After reading the room, he eventually gives up and goes on to talk about the fight. Interestingly, after this footage was originally aired, it was cut out of the replays. Then the producers decided to cut the whole interview together. As some have pointed out, why would they do this? Was Ali touching on a subject that at that time was considered off limits? During the 1970s, UFOs were really talked about, and if you were someone that wanted to bring up the topic, you'd usually be debunked straight away and the topic would be changed. Similar to what happened to Muhammad Ali during this interview. It's interesting to see how far we've come in regards to this topic. Now media outlets are openly talking about UFOs, with various high-up officials even admitting that some UFO footage that's been captured is genuine. The government hasn't always been open about UFOs. However, it seems that in recent years officials have decided to change that. UFOs have been talked about more than ever, with some theorists putting forward the idea that disclosure could be coming anytime soon. After all, going back several weeks ago, the Pentagon formally released 3 unclassified videos taken by Navy pilots. The mysterious videos showing UFOs have been circulating for years. It's caused various theories to be put forward to try and explain them. However, For skeptics, they wouldn't believe the footage until the government came forward and announced they were real. And this is exactly what happened, and they were given the name of unidentified aerial phenomena. Although this is massive news, it's not anything new. Pilots have been coming forward for years and detailing their interactions with unidentified flying objects. One person said the following: "The comments are interesting, and even after they capture these unidentified aerial objects on camera, it still feels like they're downplaying it. Although this is great news and I'm happy, they're admitting the videos are genuine and show something mysterious. What about all the people that's been told to be quiet when they've talked about these encounters? And I'm not just talking about everyday people. People in high positions who have talked about these objects have been branded as crazy. Where's the justice in that? All they were trying to do was reveal what they saw, and they were told to be quiet, with some people even losing their jobs or being demoted over it. Many UFO believers have said they're excited by the recent UFO videos and news that we've recovered off-world graphs. This could be one of the greatest discoveries that the human race has ever made. Not only this, but believers have said it's big news coming from the government and officials. As for the last few decades, they've hardly been open to the idea of talking about unidentified flying objects, and have even gone out of their way to debunk those who have come forward with their stories. Perhaps then we should be celebrating this news and looking forward to what other information the government is holding. Some pointed out this is just the tip of the iceberg and that officials know a lot more than what they've told us. Interestingly, celebrities like Tom DeLonge have been vocal about UFOs. Going back a month ago, Tom DeLonge said the following on his Twitter account. And unfortunately, it's not just something to laugh at. It's pretty unnerving, with some bad news and some good news. And with that in mind, all we can do is deal with it honestly and openly. We now know what Tom was referring to. It turns out that in a recent statement by Steve Justice, who is the chief operating officer of To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, says how the organization got their hands on exotic properties. He said the following about the object. The structure and composition of these materials are not from any non-existing military or commercial application. They've been collected from sources with varying levels of chain of custody documentation. So we are focusing on verifiable facts and working to develop independent scientific proof of the material's properties and attributes. In some cases, the manufacturing technology required to fabricate the materials is only now becoming available. It's interesting to think what Muhammad Ali would think about the recent news in regards to UFOs. Now more than ever, more people are coming forward with their sightings and encounters, and it seems that as a whole, more people are open to the idea of there being life out there. With the Milky Way galaxy being home to billions of planets, and the universe being home to billions of galaxies, it's easy to see why more people are believing that there's life out there. For some, they believe that if life does exist somewhere in the universe, it's on a distant planet billions of miles away from us. But for some, they believe that an advanced race may have made their way to us, and this is backed up by the constant reports of unidentified flying objects. The brand of Disney has always been synonymous with childhood classics and carefree amusement parks since the animation company was founded roughly a century ago. It's because of this brand image that it comes as an unbelievable surprise that the company was believed to be at the center of a long-standing theory and eventual government disclosure of extraterrestrials to future populations. Although skeptics claim that this theory is nothing more than a paranoid rant targeted at one of the largest United States corporations to ever exist, it appears that with the discovery of the lost Disney documentary surrounding unidentified flying objects in the alien cover-up, there is definitely a profound amount of legitimacy to the claim. So today we're going to take a look at the Walt Disney UFO documentary and what it means for the government disclosure of the extraterrestrial visitation of our planet. Titled Alien Encounters and hosted by Robert Uring, the Disney documentary clearly states its purpose in the opening scenes. The beginning scene starts with an opening speech by Michael Eisner, the chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company from 1984 to 2005. He goes on to state the following: with more and more scientific evidence of alien encounters and UFO sightings, the idea of creatures from another planet might not be as far-fetched as we once thought. In fact, one of you out there could have the next alien encounter. He ends his speech with claiming that the documentary is a televised special that was most likely meant to be shown in 3 parts. The first section of the documentary opens with the host Robert Urich stating the following: "We must prepare you for the future with some shocking insights of the recent past." The next 4 minutes of the documentary then show stunning high-quality video clips of extraterrestrial sightings and visitations. With one such video recorded back in 1991 in Ottawa, Canada, it appears that an unmanned vehicle meets with a landed UFO craft in a remote location, as an anonymous videographer documents the scene. The footage is then cut short to show an interview with Captain Kevin Randall, a retired Air Force intelligence officer that claims there is more than a substantial amount of evidence for the proof of the existence of extraterrestrial visitations and that they are a massive security threat that cannot be stopped with our current technology. It's at this moment in the documentary that we see the real reason behind its creation. Shortly after, Captain Kevin Randall talks about the national security threat of alien life. The documentary goes into detail about a federal-funded study done by the Brookings Institution that warns the government to prepare for the discovery of life in Spain, and that the disclosure of alien visitation would lead to mass panic and the total destruction of civilization as we know it. Could it be that Walt Disney was hired by the United States government to begin slow disclosure of alien visitation to the general population? Movies and cartoons to help prepare us for our meeting with superior interstellar creatures. In fact, the documentary host states shortly after this interview in an exact quote, "Disney Imagineers have designed a way to prepare humans for their inevitable alien encounter." At this point in the documentary, the host of the televised event explains the theories surrounding why extraterrestrials are visiting our planet. In a blunt matter-of-fact way of speaking, without hesitation or doubting the claims, the host says the following: "What the world didn't know in 1945 was that the atomic bomb's brilliant burst of energy would also be mankind's cosmic calling card, announcing to the universe that a technological society had evolved on a small blue planet in the backwaters of the stars." Alien enthusiasts have often noticed that UFO sightings and alien abductions began en masse following the first use of nuclear weaponry on the planet. Could Disney have been provided this information by the US government as the actual reason for alien visitation? Explained to them via alien contact. Oddly enough, the host states this is less of a theory and more of a verified fact. At around 20 minutes into the documentary, a chilling discovery is made as uncovered government documents go into the true dangers of UFOs arriving at our planet. During the heightened tensions of the Cold War, sensors for intercontinental ballistic missiles began to detect mysterious high-speed movements through the atmosphere that resembled intelligent flown graphs with turns, twists, and flight patterns. These mysterious objects, however, would occasionally follow the paths of intercontinental ballistic missiles, with multiple cases almost leading to the total destruction of the Earth as paranoid countries almost began nuclear missile retaliation. One such well-known event is that of the 1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm incident that claimed to have detected the reported launch of multiple ICBMs from the United States at speeds impossible to match with any known aircraft at the time. The event would have escalated to an irrevocable full-scale nuclear war had the Soviet Air Defense Forces officer Stanislav Petrov not refused to retaliate. Even when all the signs pointed to potential nuclear destruction, the Soviet general was selfless enough not to press the big red button that would lead to the destruction of the planet. Several hours later, it was confirmed with the US government that the reported detection of the ICBMs were false, with the official reports claiming that the sensory equipment had been giving false signals. Could the true explanation be that of extraterrestrial intervention, making the attempt to trick human beings into destroying each other in a heightened state of paranoia? It becomes apparent that the Disney documentary sees alien life as a planetary threat to all human life, and not that of the friendly, enlightened creatures ready to bring us gifts that the UFO community so adamantly believes. Recovered training documents from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA for short, also holds this sentiment, as the documentary clearly shows. In 1995, members of the FEMA were provided the training manual titled the following, and other sections of the documents that teach team members how to handle UFO hazards, such as power electromagnetic fields, force fields, psychological effects, and alien contact. The host of the documentary then continues with the government disclosure theory by following the strange documents with the quoted statement. Indications that the government's military and scientific leaders will soon release nearly half a century of official documentation of ongoing alien encounters on Earth. Was Disney aware of information of a possible disclosure way ahead of time, as part of the marketing campaign to slowly acclimate human beings to the possibility of alien life? A campaign that would later be canceled and lead to this documentary being banned to prevent mass panic? Or has the disclosure slowly been developing into another plan over the years? That is seen as viability grow with modern-day shows such as Ancient Aliens and popular cinematic science fiction blockbusters. The next 10 minutes of the Alien Encounters documentary begins to go into an in-depth study of astromicrobiology and the peculiar organisms that seem to arrive on our planet via asteroids. Although next to no evidence for the study can be found today. The documentary goes into detail about a hidden study made by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration that used research bases constructed in Antarctica as the center for the study of bacterial life from off our planet. The study involved finding recently crashed asteroids on the icy continent, hoping that the sub-zero temperatures would help to preserve any alien bacteria and viruses for study in a secret base unable to be reached by private or competing government organizations. According to the documentary, the study found that bacteria and viruses discovered did in fact travel across interstellar space, and that they may very well be the advanced invasion force leading the way to test Earth's environment for more complex and determined regions. The last part of the documentary immediately shifts in tone to discuss personal alien abduction events, with traumatized abductees that experience violence and privacy invading experimentation from extraterrestrial life. Featuring an interview with Bud Hopkins, the founder of the alien reduction theory, the host ends the documentary with this chilling statement. Most Americans will likely explore outer space aboard crafts of alien origin. Statistics indicate a greater probability that you will experience extraterrestrial contact within the next 5 years, and that within the next 5 years you have more of a chance to see extraterrestrials than win the state lottery. But how do you prepare for such an extraordinary event? Here is the new Tomorrowland at Disney World. Scientists and Disney engineers have brought to life a possible scenario that helps acclimate the public to their inevitable alien encounter. Although this 3-part televised documentary was never broadcast to the American public, shortly following the creation of the documentary, the Tomorrowland section of the Magic Kingdom theme park at Walt Disney World opened the extraterrestrial alien encounter attraction. The subjected children to strange binaural audio, video recordings, and images of terrifying alien abduction, all of which points to evidence of the claim that Disney had been commissioned by the United States government. Begin the slow acclimatization of extraterrestrial visitations to the general public, in the hopes that when the eventual and unavoidable planetary contact would be made, society would not buckle underneath the mass panic of the terrifying encounter. Back in 2012, Disney purchased the studio known as Lucasfilm and acquired the rights to the Star Wars universe for an incredible $4 billion. Despite analysis believing that the purchase would never see a return equivalent to its cost, Disney continued with the transaction and has gone on to make record-breaking movies featuring the Star Wars universe for children of all ages. Could the projected loss of being an acceptable cost for the purpose of space-age propaganda? Is the government disclosure project still well underway, with Disney at the head of its advertising and manipulation of the public image? With the discovery of this banned documentary, anything could very well be possible. The United States government is well known for conducting a wide variety of strange research experiments. Many of these are described as being on the cutting edge of scientific advancement. This has led to incredible breakthroughs in medicine, computer technology, agriculture, and a wide variety of additional fields used across the military. Oddly enough, however, there seems to be a recently declassified government experiment that was approved for release back in 2003, surrounding the training of psychic soldiers and enhancements to the brain known as the Gateway Process Experience experiments. The declassified document titled Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process seems to be a written memo between a U.S. Army researcher at the CIA and sent to a U.S. Army operational commander located out of Fort Meade. The study of the memo seems to have been the analysis surrounding the legitimacy of the gateway process study. As the researcher writes the following in an opening statement: "You asked me to provide an assessment of the gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. Most likely, the U.S. government was unaware of what the gateway process really entailed, and so sent an independent researcher to the examination areas to undergo the process and learn if there was any legitimacy to the study in the first place for continued funding." Within the first paragraph of the document, however, the researcher makes a special note to include that the gateway process was a technique designed by Isaac Bentov, stating the following: "Based on conversations with a physician who took the gateway training with me, I had recourse to the biomedical models developed by Isaac Bentov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process." For those that are not aware, Isaac Bentov was a leading Israeli researcher, known for his incredible contributions in the creation of patents for the steerable heart catheter, ECG electrodes, pacemaker leads, and a number of other patents that would help to form the Boston Scientific Meditech Corporation. Isaac Bentov was also known for his contributions to the Israeli Defense Force, being one of the lead inventors on the Israeli missile project, as well as many other improvised weapons. However, what many are not aware of surrounding the Israeli inventor was his devout belief in following the mystical side of consciousness, which would lead to his primary contributions to the gateway process experiment. John Abel Bentov's fellow business partner was once quoted as saying that Bentov said the following: "Bentov was interested in how the brain worked and actually attached electrodes to his head, which were connected to a function generator in which he could change the wave shape and the power, and learned about how the brain interprets these different frequencies, hinting at the plausibility of Bentov's connection with the gateway process experiment." The document then goes into the breakdown of what the gateway process holds, with the first explanation from the researcher being in regards to the human body's natural frequencies of the brain and the frequency-following response. According to the study, a form of enlightenment can be triggered in a person's mind when both hemispheres of the brain begin operating at the same frequency, allowing them to communicate without any form of distraction and leading to a heightened state of focus. Although it requires a number of different techniques to reach the state, the main contributing factor in the study was the device that relied on the human body's natural frequency-following response. In the document, the researcher details the following statement: "To achieve synchronization of brain hemispheres, the hemisync technique takes advantage of a phenomenon known as the frequency-following response, or the FFR. Which means that if a subject hears a sound produce at a frequency which emulates one of those associated with the operation of the human brain, the brain will try to mimic the same frequency pattern by adjusting its brainwave output. Therefore, if the subject is in a fully awake state, but hears sound frequencies which approximates brainwave outputs to the theta level, the subject's brain will endeavor to alter its brainwave pattern from the normal beta to the theta level." Additional techniques for reaching a syncing of the hemispheres include assisted hypothesis from a psychologist, as well as techniques that match transcendental meditation practices, with a note stating that gurus who have practiced transcendental meditation practices for 20 years have the ability to reach a hemisphere sync for up to 15 minutes at a time, without any form of assisted technology. According to the document, this training lasts around 7 days before a person is capable of reaching a hemisphere sync frequency with the assistance of technology and is capable of furthering the study with tasks related to skill and a gateway process experience techniques. The first task that is given to the trained subject is that of problem solving. When under the influence of synced hemispheres, a subject can call upon its higher self for assistance in solving problems, with the higher self representing a form of unfiltered subconsciousness that can remember everything ever taught to the subject and use it for perfect creativity and logical deduction. The document details that this ability can be used to solve personal difficulties, technical problems in the realm of physics, mathematics, science, practical administrative problems, and so on, in a way turning the brain into an instantly responding and calculating computer that can analyze and process information at a much faster rate than normal. The second task that is given to a trained subject is referred to as an energy bar tool. The subject is then required to visualize and focus different forms of energy throughout its body, being fed by the universe to allow the body to undergo rapid healing processes. This could mean that with the increased focus on the mind, The brain can suddenly in consciousness force autonomous physical processes, such as healing and heart rate ravines. The third, and usually described as the final task for most of the subjects, is referred to by the researchers of the gateway process experience as remote viewing. Although it's not similar to traditional remote viewing noted by psychics to see distant locations using astral projection. Instead, the technique requires the subject to visualize and access parts of their memory, and begin to holographically portray the memory in such a way as to allow the person to relive memories with perfect total recall. The researcher writing the document then notes that this is typically where training and ability of most of the subjects end, and that less than 5% of the participants are able to move party skills into the realm of impossible to understand psychic abilities. The document then details the following. The ability known as Focus 21, the future, the last and most advanced of all focus states associated with the Gateway training program, involves movement outside of the boundaries of time spaces in Focus 15. But with attention to discovering the future rather than the past, the individual who has achieved this state has reached a truly advanced level. The research document then goes on to state that the ability to travel into the future is accomplished only after the subject is able to master an out-of-body experience. This occurs when the natural brain frequency of the hemispheres are synced and then reach a matching frequency with the background electromagnetic phenomenon of the universe, allowing consciousness to imprint itself and begin to leave its body and journey out into the rest of the world, picking up electromagnetic information similar to how a radio captures radio waves, and how our eyes capture photons to imprint an image of our surrounding environment. Once this information begins to pour into the consciousness of a person, they can then begin the process of astral projection that will allow them to speed up time and look into the future, as well as deep within the past at moments that their memory would not be able to access. Unfortunately, the document does not go into any form of evidence surrounding the legitimacy of the claims of an out-of-body experience with the ability to see into the past or future with verifiable tests. Regardless of this lack of information, the formal conclusion of the document states the following. There is a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering the gateway process experience to be plausible in terms of its essential objectives of heightened brain activity. Additionally, the document seems to hold several pages involving a new scientific theory as to the formation of the universe, and that is actually a massive three-dimensional toroid, helping to explain why certain parts of the universe seem to be moving at faster speeds compared to others, as evidence of this donut-shaped moving the mass of galaxies back down and around to the other side of the universe. The document then ends with the researcher stating that the gateway process experience should be provided to all members of the organization for heightened mental ability, and goes on to suggest a 12-step plan as to how to provide the gateway training to all members of the organization. Although the document fails to elaborate on the finding, the memo then states the training could open up members of the gateway process to be attacked by intelligent energy beings, if the boundaries of time and space are being surpassed. Stating the following, subjects must be intellectually prepared to react to possible encounters with intelligent, non-corporal energy forms when time-space boundaries are exceeded, with additional statements that perhaps practical use of the gateway process experience could be used to gather information from such entities and the universal consciousness. Humans have managed to accomplish a lot in a relatively short time. We've already sent humans to live in space and to the moon. We've developed large and very sophisticated telescopes that have been able to reach some of the most remote places in space. Many organizations have decided to take it a step further. The European Space Agency, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and NASA have been working very hard to find if we're completely alone. Organizations are now sending probes and rovers to distant planets in order to see if it hosts life. These missions have piqued the interest of millions of people worldwide, and due to our technology and the various photographs that get sent back, it's caused some to do a little digging of their own. It seems though that all this has done is worked against the organizations, as people from various countries have managed to find some mysterious anomalies on and around planets in our solar system. One of the most interesting discoveries is that of the Mars tunnels. This discovery doesn't get much attention, but when it was discovered back in 1999, many people couldn't wrap their head around what the Mars Global Surveyor had captured. When the photographs started to get seen, various theories were put forward to try and explain them. One that received the most attention was that these photographs showed some type of ancient tunnel system that had been built on the red planet. This, for some, was the proof they'd been looking for, and that these structures were proof that an ancient civilization had once called this place home. The Mars Orbiter Surveyor was launched on the 7th of November 1996. It had taken years to build this incredible piece of equipment, but it's noted by NASA as being the first successful mission to the red planet in over 20 years. The orbiter finally reached the red planet's back in March of 1999, where it would then go on to map the terrain from a low altitude. Since this date, it sent back thousands of images, interestingly many of which haven't been studied by researchers or scientists, and which some say do hide interesting anomalies that could help us understand the planet's environment better. This early surveyor was able to tell scientists a lot about Mars' surface, environment, atmosphere, and interior. That was on, the Mars orbiter was able to send back some incredible images that would help us understand how we would approach this planet in the future when it came to missions. During this mission, though, the spacecraft sent back some interesting photographs that some say can't be explained using natural explanations. As mentioned, one of the most interesting ones is that of the Mars glass tunnels. These mysterious tunnels have been described as looking like large, impressive structures that don't naturally occur on the planet. They have the typical shape of what you'd expect a tunnel to look like, and are partially covered by the surface's terrain, causing some to suggest that these structures are tens of thousands of years old. Interestingly, other high-quality photographs show these tunnels as looking partially transparent. This was one of the first things that people noticed about them, with some saying that because of this translucent-like quality, it made them stand out against the Martian backdrop. There's even others that went down a different route and suggested that what we're looking at could have been a creature, while others said that what we're looking at could be an ancient graveyard. This theory comes about after some compare the structures as looking like whale ribs and bones that are sometimes discovered in cold regions on our planet. Another idea is that these tunnel-like systems were created by giant ice worms. Ice worms are known to live in gravel beds or the banks of glacial ice. Some have suggested that this is what we're seeing here, but on a much larger scale. Again, suggesting that many years ago these creatures existed and carved out these large tunnels. However, some have said this doesn't explain why the tubes appear to be partially transparent. And this has caused some to put forward the idea these were created by intelligent beings. Space agencies have said, though, these are not tunnels, but rather are natural dunes that have developed over the years. NASA even came forward and backed up this statement. David C. Pieri of Earth and Space Sciences Division of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory said that there's nothing mysterious about these glass tunnel anomalies and that what we're looking at is just a Martian dune. Dr. Pieri is respected in his field, but some have disagreed with this statement, especially when they've gone on to compare the alleged anomalies with Mars dunes, saying that the two are not similar. Some even went forward to say that David hadn't viewed the zoomed-in images and just received the original image that looks much different to the cropped version. In reality, the discovery has been at the center of an interesting discussion, which is there life on Mars? Regardless, it seems that believers are sticking to the idea that these are genuine tunnels, either created or dug out by something living on the red planet. Mars is the planet that people look to for life, perhaps because it's within reach and that it's always been featured in the news. Interestingly, NASA themselves have also dropped hints of this according to those who've looked into the topic. For example, going back a few months ago, one story that made the news came from one of NASA's chief scientists. NASA will soon be traveling to Mars in order to drill deep in the rocks. This is in the hopes of finding evidence of living organisms on the red planet. Mars could be home to current life, as the space agency has expressed much interest in the planets over the years, along with upcoming space agency SpaceX, who have said they plan to put humans on the red planet within the next few years. Dr. Jim Green is the man who came forward and said the statement, and he thinks this mission could be a real success in finding life on Mars. However, he has said that he doesn't think people of our planet would be ready for the news. It's no secret that we've managed to accomplish a lot in a relatively short amount of time. And in regards to space, although it's massive, we have discovered some incredible things in recent years. It's been suggested by the scientists that this mission will likely be going on for the next few years, and that it will take some time to find out if there really is life on Mars. Dr. Green said the following about the upcoming mission. I've been worried about that because I think we're close to finding it and making some announcements. It will start a whole new line of thinking. I don't think we're prepared for the results. Interestingly, some have said they think we're close to discovering life on other planets. And they say this because it seems that space agencies are gearing up to explore space more. Use SpaceX and Space Force as an example and say they think Space Force was established because they think they're trying to tell us something. Countries have shown a massive interest in space. This includes places like China, who not too long ago made history by landing on the dark side of the moon. It's not just NASA who will be digging into the Martian surface. It's also reported that the European Space Agency, along with Russia, will also be heading to Mars, and their main goal is to find life, saying they're hopeful and open to the idea that life could be on Mars. NASA's Mars 2020 rover will be sent to the planet with one mission, and that's to find life. Researchers have said it will be equipped with the newest technology that will help aid in this discovery, and that once it's collected samples, it will be sent back to Earth. Dr. Green has said he's excited for this next step, and that he wished the European Space Agency and Russia the best of luck in their mission. Dr. Green went on to say that if we discovered life, it would be an incredible milestone. But it would also lead to many questions that we're not able to answer. For example, how did life get there? Are we related in some way, and how long has it been there? Mars 2020 has a planned launch on the 30th of July 2020 and will hopefully touch down on Mars on the 18th of February 2021, which scientists say they think this lake sits under the planet's south polar ice camp, and it's around 12 miles or 20 kilometers across. All across the world, researchers have discovered incredible megalithic structures. Although they are impressive, they have continued to puzzle engineers and archaeologists in the modern era. Not only are these structures impossible to replicate in current times, but they were seen as monumental and impossible tasks for our ancient ancestors. How they built these structures is widely unknown and has caused a massive stir in the archaeological communities. How could our ancient ancestors build such incredible structures in a time when it was deemed impossible? Various theories have been put forward to try and explain them, but the majority of these are just theories and are still up for debate. However, recently, researchers have announced that one of Stonehenge's mysteries has been solved. Always a major fascination amongst the locals of the area and researchers from around the world, Stonehenge has proven to be quite a mystery to anyone who even attempts to understand its construction and the techniques behind it. What only are the large blocks used so massive that even modern means of construction would fail in regards to establishing Stonehenge? But the sources of the blocks appear to have been carved from hundreds of miles away, which lead many researchers to question the ability of transporting such large stones to the area. To add to this bizarre strangeness of the formation of Stonehenge, it's been discovered that the structure appears to have been built with astonishing precision in its placement and carved creation. The structure appears to be able to be used as a complex calendar and can keep track of time to an incredibly mysterious accurate degree. However, this does insinuate that not only did the ancients have the technology to cut the stones with laser precision, transport the massive logs, lift them with tremendous force and place them with perfect alignment, but that our ancestors also had the ability to make megalithic structures in a very short span of time. This continues to baffle researchers to this day who work to uncover more secrets regarding Stonehenge, such as its weird electromagnetic properties and special materials used in its creation. Others have even argued that the formation of the Great Stonehenge could be direct proof of ancient technologies and extraterrestrial intervention. Researchers and scientists don't agree with this notion, though, and have even said they've unraveled one of its mysteries, and this is where the famous large stones come from. Before this discovery, researchers only knew that the stones had been placed there around 2500 BC. But a new study carried out by researchers at the University of Brighton have announced that they've traced the stones to a woodland close to Wiltshire. It's here that they say the stones originated. And back when the monument was being constructed, this area would have been rich with these large sarsen boulders, the rocks that were used to build Stonehenge. Further studies showed the team that the ancient civilization would have chosen these giant boulders because of their size and how flat they were. This in turn is thought to have helped the prehistoric workers to move the stones. Interestingly, the team said that not only did they use these giant stones for Stonehenge, but they also used them to construct other structures. The team also said that over 1,000 years before Stonehenge was constructed, the giant blocks would have been used to construct a massive local prehistoric tomb. This would have been 4 important individuals in the region. The archaeologists have said it's an exciting discovery, and that now they're trying to work out the route in which the workers took to transport them. Although the team said they made great progress, they still said they want to work out how the workers transported these 15 to 45-ton stones over 15 miles. When looking into the route, though, they said this would have been no easy task, as during some of these trips, these giant boulders would have had to have been hauled up an incline for several hundred meters. As of right now, more study is needed to determine how these ancient workers achieved this. Interestingly, though, those who have looked into Stonehenge have said this more than what meets the eye. For years, an archaeological site of significant importance has always been a major fascination amongst the locals of the area and researchers from around the world, and that location is Stonehenge. And those who've studied the interesting monument have said it's proven to be quite a mystery to anyone who even attempts to try and understand it. When researchers attempted to better understand the strange electromagnetic phenomenon experienced at Stonehenge, they began to put forward a theory when plotting on a map a number of different megalithic monuments. That points to the idea of one long and massive road that seems to have connected the monuments in a straight line. This would later lead to the theory that the spiritual placement of Stonehenge was that of a mystical property, and that this invisible road could have been referenced to a mystical line of energy that ran around the world known as a ley line. Though no one is quite sure that ley lines are responsible for it, it is believed there is a connection with that of the Earth's electromagnetic field, and a property of mystical energy surrounding the entire monument. Ley lines are lines that cut across the Earth spotted with landmarks and historic structures, and convey alongside them flowing Earth energies, and these energies are concentrated at the points the lines meet. The concept behind the lines started with amateur archaeologist and businessman Alfred Watkins in 1921. This is when he realized that ancient sites appear to be lined up with others close by. Drew lines on its map to show that people that lived in Old Britain traveled in a straight line pattern, with major man-made or natural sites falling in this line. In his 1925 book, The Old Straight Track, he suggested that ancient Roman and medieval structures across the globe fall within these straight lines. But his proposal was rejected by experts and archaeological scholars. His fault finders noticed that his faults depended on drawing lines between destinations set up at various times of the past. They additionally contended that in ancient times it was unfeasible to go in a straight line of a bumpy or rugged zones in Britain, rendering his ley lines far-fetched as trade routes. A year later, Watkins' followers started the Straight Line Club, and in 1927 Watkins published a book titled The Ley Line Hunters to help those interested in finding their own ley lines. The New Age movement interest in ley lines started in the 1960s by Earth Mysteries movement, growing from something ordinary to a whole field of study, with more published books, research and fans gathering together to dig deeper and find new paths that ley lines led to. Most believe these lines had supernatural powers or mysterious energies, even though Watkins never had that thought in the beginning. Other paranormal subjects have infused the concepts of ley lines to include things like UFOs and Atlantis. Critics to this day feel that until ley lines are proven scientifically, it cannot be taken seriously as most of the connected lines are mere coincidence. Ley lines remain a mystery, and whether or not they're true, it goes to show man's interest in finding patterns in everything around us. It's interesting to think how far humanity has come in regards to structures. We've built some incredible ones in the modern day, but some of the most impressive and mysterious are those that our ancient ancestors built. Although we step closer to understanding how they did it, sometimes discoveries can throw up more questions than answers. These interesting discoveries and monuments make for interesting conversations. And perhaps one day we'll be able to look back and understand just how they did it. So what do you make of this recent discovery? And how do you think the prehistoric workers were able to get the slabs to the Stonehenge location? One of the largest theory community groups in the world isn't that of the combined writings of cryptozoological beliefs, or even that of the overly popular concept of alien intervention and abduction. It appears to be the collective theory and gathered evidence of the existence of ancient advanced civilizations. It's only really been in recent years that people have started to look into our ancient history, study what our ancestors said, and look at how they realistically created and achieved what they did. Various archaeological discoveries have been made in recent years that have confused scientists and researchers. Although they've gone on to explain how these things came to be, it's important to remember that these are just theories. And although they may be the leading idea into how these things came to be, it doesn't mean we should totally rule out other possibilities. Back in 1972, when a large amount of uranium ore was being mined from the Oklo mines, located out of the country of Gabon, a small nation found in Central Africa, scientists began to test the uranium deposits to catalog the amount of recovered uranium-235 that was gathered from the site and could be used for ongoing efforts of nuclear fusion and nuclear reactors. Unfortunately, they quickly realized that a substantial amount of uranium-235 was missing from the ore deposits, as uranium-235 naturally forms a solid concentration of 0.72%. Found a significant amount lacking from the mined minerals. As they investigated the situation, believing that perhaps more than 200 kilograms had been stolen, they quickly realized located near the mine location was the perfect conditions to form a believed to be naturally forming nuclear reactor that is dated to be roughly 1.8 billion years old. The scientists claim that the uranium using underground water to help stabilize the nuclear reaction was discovered underground. Theorists, however, have an alternative explanation. Given the fact that the specifications required to form a naturally made nuclear reactor require specific storage of the uranium-235, the continued influx of water and a number of steps to prevent the compounds from becoming superheated, it's believed that the location is not naturally formed. Rather, the use of a primitive nuclear reactor used by humans and possibly used to create a substantial amount of energy. Theorists point to the fact that if ancient humans were allegedly able to build massive megalithic structures along with impressive inventions which seemed impossible to achieve during such a time, why wouldn't they be able to build something like a nuclear reactor? The issue with these theories, including those that scientists have put forward, is that they're just theories. It's understandable why people would think that advanced civilizations once lived in the past. After all, their incredible megalithic structures are still standing today, thousands of years after they were built, while modern buildings and designs have fallen within a few hundred years. Scientists, historians, and archaeologists can't agree on the age of some of these structures either, with some saying that they're a few thousand years old, while others have said they're tens of thousands of years old. Today, the claim that this is a nuclear reactor is debated. Other mysterious structures are those that are currently standing at Giza. It's a subject that's been talked about for years, but what some don't point out is some of the inconsistencies and math that comes with it. The first question that's been put forward is if the 3 to 80-ton blocks were dragged up the pyramids, why are there no marks on the structures itself? Also, where are these massive ramps that helped with the workers? How are these ramps able to take the strain of a 40 to 60-ton stone block? According to modern historians and Egyptologists, they claim that a massive amount of people helped construct these giant pyramids. In fact, Greek philosopher and historian Herodotus claimed that 100,000 men built these structures, and they did this within 20 years. That would mean that one stone block would have to be precisely placed in the pyramid every 3.5 minutes. 24 hours a day for 20 years straight. The pyramids are claimed to be royal tombs, yet as of today not one mummy has ever been discovered inside. One thing that is known about the Egyptians is they carve hieroglyphics into many things. Yet when inside the pyramids you will not find any hieroglyphic markings. As mentioned, although various theories have been put forward to try and explain them, As of today, they're just theories. The main questions that remain today is how were they built? Why were they built and who built them? Also during the 1950s, French Egyptologist Henri Schwallow visited the Great Sphinx and remarked that there was a substantial amount of water erosion across the structure, believing that perhaps the structure had been submerged at one point in time and had not been weathered by the wind as previous theories claimed. Shortly after this claim, Schwallow was labeled as a mystic and slandered by countless other archaeologists, who believed that Schwallow was making up the claims to appeal to a fringe group of theorists. Despite these personal attacks, alternative Egyptologist and author John Anthony West sought out the opinion of the Associate Professor of Natural Sciences at the College of General Studies at Boston University, a geologist by the name of Robert Tenchmark. This was back in 1989. Robert then spent a significant amount of time investigating the enclosure's geology and came to the conclusion that the main type of weathering that was evidence on the Sphinx's enclosure were caused by significant amounts of water damage and not that of natural wind and sand as previously theorized. Robert Schnock also found the weathering was consistent with blocks found at the valley temples, leading Robert to claim the following statement. Therefore, if the granite facing is covering deeply weathered limestone, the original limestone structures must predate by a considerable degree the granite facing. Obviously, if the limestone cores, originating from the Sphinx stitch of the temples, predate the granite ashlars, and the granite ashlars are attributed to Khafre of the 4th dynasty, then the Great Sphinx was built prior to the reign of Khafre. End quote. Given the fact that the Egyptian government is keen to maintain the history that the ancient Egyptian civilization was responsible for the megalithic structures, and not some unknown civilization that predates their culture, it would explain why efforts had been made to cover up the findings over the decades. Today, the water erosion hypothesis is still shunned by the Egyptian community. So what do you make of these recent discoveries? Mark Hodak, one of Neuralink's founders, have just announced they think it's possible they can create an exotic species of dinosaurs, saying that it could be done within just 15 years. Max further said they think they could build Jurassic Park. Max said the following: we could probably build Jurassic Park if we wanted to. Wouldn't be genetically authentic dinosaurs, but maybe 15 years of breeding and engineering to get a super exotic novel species. Biodiversity is definitely valuable. Conservation is important and makes sense. But why do we stop there? Why don't we more intentionally try to generate novel diversity? End quote. Although dinosaurs, as we know it, have gone extinct, scientists the world over have proposed theories to bring them back. So the question on many people's mind is, can we actually do this? Scientists say that theoretically, yes, we can. Interestingly, going back a few years ago, biologists took it upon themselves to carry out a test which would show them what a chicken and dinosaur hybrid would look like. This is the first step in understanding how we could create a 21st century dinosaur and what that creature would look like. The scientists working on the project were able to isolate clusters of genes that aid in facial development. The team was then able to discover a way of stopping them in the chicken's embryos, and after doing this, what they were left with was an animal that looked very similar to what a Velociraptor would have looked like. The lead author of the study, Bart Unjabala from Yale University, said the following: we had not set out to create a dinosaur chicken. When examining an important evolutionary transformation, we wanted to find out the underlying process. The beak is part of the avian skeleton that's most extensively and radically diversified. We wanted to find out if the beak was functional. However, not everyone's on board with this idea and have said we should leave dinosaurs in the past. Many, though, like the idea of bringing dinosaurs back to life and have said they'd love to see something that resembles a dinosaur be brought back to life within their lifetime. In March 2017, Neuralink, a company funded by Elon Musk, was revealed. During a presentation, Elon showcased his newest scientific idea, brain chips. He showed a pig who had a coin-sized chip inside her brain. Elon Musk said the following: it's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires. It actually fits quite nicely in your skull. Could be under your hair and you wouldn't know it. According to the organization, the device could help sufferers of neurological disorders control phones and computer devices with their mind. Elon announced that his device could someday even cure dementia, Parkinson's, and spinal cord injuries. Neuralink will record electrical signals in the brain in order to determine potential actions. Recording neurons will let the link decode the information in the brain. The official website of Neuralink stated the following: in the movement-related areas of the brain, neurons represent intended movements. There are neurons in the brain that carry information about everything we see, feel, touch, or think. End quote. EEGs can monitor neural activity from outside their head, but cannot analyze specific signals. Residential neural link, which would be inserted inside the brain, could do with ease. The link would be made of micron-scale threads and inserted into areas of the brain which control movement. Every thread will contain a multitude of electrons. These threads, Elon assures, will be flexible and tiny, so much so that they'll be inserted using a robotic machine and not a human, leaving no room for human error. A Neuralink app would also accompany the brain chip, allowing you to control your iOS device, keyboard, or mouse with your mind by simply thinking about what you'd like to do. Officially, the Neuralink is a BMI, fully integrated brain-machine interface, sometimes referred to as a BCI, or a brain-computer interface. A BMI can link technology to the brain directly. Information from the brain will be sent to the device. Vice versa. For example, a computer could send information to the brain that would make it possible to restore the sense of touch to the body. However, many question the safety of such a device, since countless things could go wrong. There's also a lack of safety criteria. It's new territory and lacks standard guidelines, which means we'd have to take the company for their word when they claim it's safe to use. As some have said, is that really a risk you want to take? The main goal of the project is allegedly to help those with paralysis by giving them their independence and allowing them the power to control the electronics around them. It'll make it easier to communicate in everyday society and might let people be more creative, since they could edit and alter videos, artworks, and photographs with their minds. Clinical trials are yet to begin. The safety has not been tested as of yet, but Elon assures the public that safety is something they're taking very seriously. Unfortunately, though, there's always a risk for something to go wrong. They state that the neurological robot is capable and efficient at electrode insertion, and that the hole made in the skull would be 23 millimeters in diameter. But inserting this device into the head will put people at risk of heavy bleeding. There's also a chance that blood vessels may be damaged. Currently, the company is facing opposition from many critics who fear the danger which this device may impose on human life. Elon has also been quite outspoken about AI and has said that scientists only have a 5 to 10% chance of being able to make AI safe. Although many people have put a lot of hope in the future of artificial intelligence and the possibility that can emerge from a world run with the help of machines. One tech mogul is not so hopeful. His company, OpenAI, has even created an artificial intelligence system capable of self-teaching. Yet despite his heavy involvement in the field, Musk remains apprehensive about the future run by machines and estimates that the ongoing efforts to make artificial intelligence safe for humans only has a 5 to 10% chance of success. This dire prediction means that artificial intelligence will most certainly pose a risk to humans, and Musk is not the only one to recognize and voice these concerns. Stephen Hawking claimed that he was certain that artificial intelligence systems are dangerous and could potentially replace humans. Yet the realm of artificial intelligence development moves forward, and with it the capabilities of non-humans. AI systems have been developed to create languages, express curiosity, diagnose illnesses, identify different or unusual behaviors, perform military simulations, and even systems that are capable of creating other AI systems. It would seem that with only a small amount of further development, the machines would not need us anymore. So what do you make of Neuralink? And given the opportunity, would you have one of these embedded inside your brain? This photograph was shared by NASA back in 2004. It shows a spectacular light show that was captured by the Polar spacecraft. It wasn't until people took a closer look at the image, however, that they noticed something strange. NASA said the following about the image on their website. The polar spacecraft saw the aurora australis, which is the southern lights expanding and brightening on November 8th. The Earth seems to move from top to bottom due to Polar's orbit. A halo, CME, or coronal mass ejection occurs when a CME produces an expanding circle of particles all around the Sun. When observers see this, they know this CME is heading directly towards or away from the Earth. In this case, all were headed in our direction, bringing the auroral light show with them. The source of storms was a group of sunspots called Active Region 696. The area also produced powerful solar explosions called flares. End quote. When people saw the image, though, they noticed a large black hole that could be seen in Antarctica. Now, it's important to note that NASA doesn't agree with these sorts of theories and have said that people are seeing things that aren't there, but it hasn't stopped people from sharing these images. And when first looking at them, it does look like there's a large black hole in Antarctica, saying that perhaps this is one of the reasons why Antarctica is of interest. One person said the following: "I saw this image featured on an astronomy group. It was shared a while ago and a few people noticed this large hole. I showed it to a few people and they agreed that it looked weird. I'm not saying this is anything and I don't want to put ideas out there, but it does look strange." End quote. There's others who have said that various holes can be found scattered across our planet and that these lead directly into the Earth. Although some are not backed up by fact, there have been recently archaeological discoveries that back up this idea. In fact, it's been proven that humans have created and lived in these mysterious holes, with some of them going deep into the Earth. Digging into the planet isn't anything new. But as of right now, scientists and researchers have said that no humans have ever been found in Antarctica and that they've never found any artifacts to suggest that humans have ever lived here. However, as mentioned by others, this is the current theory and it doesn't mean that in the future we won't find artifacts that could point to humans once being here. As of today, NASA hasn't commented on the photograph. Others, though, don't buy this idea. I'd have said this could be the auroras giving off the illusion that something's there. Interestingly, this photograph reminded many of the stories shared by Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Going back in 1947, Richard Byrd of the United States Navy would fly directly to the North Pole in a daring mission. It was during this trip that he said he entered the Earth, something that at the time confused many people. This second Earth will in Earth, as it's been labeled, would suggest that there was an opening he was able to fly into and that it must have been big enough for his plane to fit into. He not only said this, but also told of the incredible things he witnessed. He said that once inside the Earth, he was able to see some incredible things, some of which included mountain ranges, wildlife, waterfalls, and vegetation. The animals he witnessed, though, were different to our modern-day animals, saying that they were much larger in size and looked prehistoric. He said he was able to see a creature that closely resembled that of a mammoth and that it was hiding in the vegetation below. While flying above this interesting new world, he was able to find somewhere to land, after which he said he was greeted by flying machines. Once these crafts arrived, they then signaled him to follow them to another location. He described these machines as being much more advanced than his plane, and that piloting them were beings much more advanced than humans. Once they reached the location, the being said this land is called Agatha. After the long flight, the crew needed rest, and the beings were very happy to let them do this. Once rested, the team was taken to the inner world's ruler. However, they were told this wasn't a random meeting, and that they had been tracked the entire time. They allowed them to enter because they wanted to talk to the men about the United States atomic projects, saying that they needed to be stopped as no good is going to come from them. They further said they had been monitoring the nation and decided that now would be the best time to make contact. This was in the hopes of making peace and moving forward to try and create a new and better world, one where such atomic weapons were not needed. The crew were honored that the beings trusted them. After this incredible encounter, their lives would never be the same. Back in January 1956, Admiral Byrd once again traveled back to this region. This new crew was able to locate an entrance and so flew inside. It said they were able to get a few thousand miles inside the inner Earth, where once again they encountered the crafts and the beings. As soon as the Admiral arrived back, the American press caught wind of the mission. However, nothing was released and all information and evidence was eventually lost. The encounter wasn't told by anyone, and those who did mention it were silenced. Unfortunately, although this story is incredible, there's no way to back up the claims of what the men saw. It's an amazing story and one that will likely be told for the foreseeable future. What you make of this photograph taken by the Polar spacecraft? The photograph shared by NASA's Perseverance rover is currently doing the rounds, showing what appears to be a rainbow. Although NASA said this isn't what people are seeing, something else in the background caught people's attention. According to NASA, they have said that the image does not show a rainbow. They said the following on social media. Many have asked, is that a rainbow on Mars? No, rainbows aren't possible here. Rainbows are created by light reflecting off round water droplet. But there isn't enough water here to condense, and it's too cold for liquid water in the atmosphere. This arc is a lens flare. People's attention quickly turned to the strange objects that can be seen in the background. Immediately people started to share the image beneath NASA's reply, with some even reporting that NASA was deleting and suppressing certain comments that pointed this out. One person said the following, "It's funny because a lot of people are seeing these strange objects in the background of these photographs, and people are even pointing them out to NASA. Yet they've ignored every single person so far. For me, they're not smudges because when you look at the images, they were taken seconds apart from each other. And the object is in different positions in the sky. I've searched through older Mars photographs and have found similar things. It's great that people are starting to find these UFOs. Now it's important to note that an unidentified flying object doesn't mean it's alien. But as some have pointed out, when these strange objects keep getting found above Mars, it does make you question what they are." Another person said the following, "NASA's Perseverance rover has already sent back many images. And what I find interesting is how these black objects can be seen in a few of them. They match similar-looking objects that have been captured in previous images. Although they can be hard to see, I'm glad that people are questioning what these things are. Even if they have a natural origin, I think it's important that we ask these questions. However, some have said that these objects are not of interest and are likely smudges and dust. With that being said, amateur researchers who have searched through old NASA images have claimed that they can't be dismissed so easily and that other rovers have captured unidentified flying objects above the Martian surface. This photograph was taken by NASA's and shows what some say is a large triangular craft. Others say it looks more like a disk, but one thing that most agree on is that it looks strange in other place. The image started to gain traction when a few websites posted about it. People use this image as proof that the triangular-shaped crafts have the ability to travel to other planets. I've covered the triangular-shaped crafts various times, and as mentioned each time, people who study them can't agree on what they are. One UFO researcher said the following, "This photograph is interesting because it's one of those that the more you zoom in, the more interesting it gets. At first, it's easy to miss the UFO in the background, but once you zoom in, you're able to see the corners of this thing. You can also tell that it's in the background as opposed to being on the camera. Usually when it's a piece of mud or debris, it has a smudge effect. In this image, you can tell it's hovering in the background. I think this is one of those times where the NASA rover accidentally caught something in the background." End quote. So what does NASA say about this? They have said that although the photographs can look interesting and in some cases otherworldly, every single time one of their scientists have investigated them, they've always come to the conclusion that they're natural and don't show anything to suggest that they're a genuine UFO. The most common explanation they use is that these types of objects are just pareidolia. This is where our mind tricks us into thinking something is there when it isn't. Amateur researchers, though, don't buy into this idea and say that these days NASA doesn't even investigate these sightings, and just uses the same explanation every time something strange is seen. It's not just UFOs found on Mars. Another object of interest is that of the Mars monolith. The Mars monolith is a rectangular object that was identified on Mars' surface. Orbit imagery taken from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter at around 180 miles away shows that the Mars monolith sits at the bottom of a cliff, which scientists believe it likely fell from. The monolith has had waves of attention since its discovery by the high-resolution imaging science experiment camera aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Because of this, scientists regularly speak on the matter of the Mars monolith, as well as other similar structures found on Mars and elsewhere in the solar system. Jonathan Hill, a researcher and mission planner at the Mars Spaceflight Facility at Arizona, his task of processing a large chunk of NASA's Mars mission imagery. Hill states in his opinion the object is most likely a peculiar-shaped rock. Speaking on the matter, Hill said the following: "When your resolution is too low to fully resolve an object, it tends to look rectangular because the pixels in the images are square. Any curve will look like a series of straight lines if you reduce your resolution. This would explain the large number of monoliths found in the solar system. This visual illusion is a side effect of our distance from things in outer space. The high-resolution imaging science experiment camera is able to take photographs at a resolution of 1 foot per pixel. While that might be useful for a large number of research purposes, it does mean that smaller objects can lose focus in detail." To Hill, the location of the Mars monolith also suggests that it's nothing more than a boulder. He argues that it makes little sense for a being or beings to create such an object, just to leave it in a location where it would eventually fall. Hill said the following about aliens: "If I was going to build a monolith somewhere, that's the last place I'd put it. The debris from the cliff would cover it up pretty quickly." End quote. What you make of these interesting photographs captured on and above Mars? Do you think they show unidentified flying objects? Or do you believe NASA in that these are just camera anomalies and debris? Across the globe, promises of amazing views from the summit and spectacular trails attract hundreds of thousands of tourists. These range from numerous mountain ranges to climb and hike to their heart's content. People of every age and experience take to the trails, and no matter their experience, some never return. It's these mountainous regions that are also home to mysterious discoveries. So today we'll be taking a look at 3 mountain mysteries. The mysterious 60-foot hole appeared on the side of Mount Shasta. Over 10 years ago, a random hole appeared on the side of Mount Shasta, seemingly overnight. It was built using a simple makeshift pulley system and reached about 60 feet deep. It was as if someone tried to dig into the volcano, which surprised the locals and Forest Service. The offenders had only left behind a few buckets, a smart water bottle, and a ladder to signify their presence. For the past decade, locals and mystery enthusiasts have been trying to figure out the reason and cause for this strange hole. There are currently 3 main theories to explain it. The first theory is related to the legend of Lemuria. Some town inhabitants believe that there is a lost continent underneath Mount Shasta called Lemuria, with its capital city, Telos. It is named after the word lemur, because an English zoologist in the 19th century theorized the lemurs traveled to Madagascar from India using this lost continent. For some reason, it ended up buried underneath a mountain range in California. Some people have even reported seeing robed Lemurian citizens traveling through the mountains and visiting the town's shops. The diggers might have been attempting to reach the lost city through the hole. The mountain is also considered sacred to the First Nation tribe, Winnemem-Wintu, indigenous to the area surrounding the McCloud River in Northern California. The people have a spiritual connection to the mountain and regard themselves as its watchers because their tribe came out of the mountain thousands of years ago. The second theory regarding the hole is that the culprits were digging for Native American artifacts. This area has been rife with looting for many years as artifacts can sell for a very high price. It is illegal to dig without a permit, resulting in fines of up to $20,000 and potential jailing for up to 1 year. Police explained that looters typically work at night and dig using the same pulley method seen with the hole. However, the Forest Service and Winnemem-Wintu tribe do not believe it was looters. It is improbable any artifacts are in the area since leaving items would disrespect the spirits and mountain. The Forest Service argued for the third theory: someone was mining for gold. There was a bit of gold found in the town's relative area during the gold rush era, so the offenders might have tried to find some. However, the location of the hole is unlikely to provide any gold because of its volcanic geology. Regardless of which theory you believe, the case is still unsolved. No one figured out who dug the hole, and the rangers were quick to fill it to prevent any accidents. Whether it was to find a lost continent, Native American artifacts, or gold, it seems that it will always remain a mystery. The disappearance of Sharon Bice. On May 23, 2014, Sharon Gay Bice disappeared from the Mount Roberts Trail in Alaska. She was last seen at 9:30 a.m. that morning at the Alaska Marine Line store in downtown Genoa. The 48-year-old was hiking solo and had not notified any friends or family about her plans. She was supposed to meet with a friend the next day at 8:45 a.m. to go hiking together, but failed to show. After some time, she was reported missing, but troopers have not found any clues of her whereabouts to this day. Sharon Weiss was a physical therapist working for Geno Physical Therapy and had lived in Geno for a decade by the time of her disappearance. She also ran a side business where she sold orthopedic office chairs. She was shipping out 2 chairs at Alaska Marine Lines the day that she went missing, from Greenland, where she went ice camping. She had even biked from Alaska to Canada at one point and enjoyed running, kayaking, and playing hockey. Weiss was always active, so her longtime hiking partner was very confused when she did not show up that morning. Weiss owned an emergency GPS but left it at home that day along with her overnight backpack. Police assumed her cell phone was with her, but it was most likely turned off as the phone company could not ping its location. And Johnson called the police and filed a missing person report after Bice failed to show up for their Hawthorne Peaks hike. Feeling uneasy about the situation, Johnson drove around that evening to various trailheads looking for Bice's car. She eventually found it parked at Mount Roberts Trailhead at 9:30 p.m. on May 24, 2014. The search began at 1 a.m. on May 25th and covered the entire Mount Genoa trail system and backcountry over 4 days. The U.S. Coast Guard, Alaska State Troopers, Southeast Alaska Dogs, and the Alpine Club all joined the search and rescue alongside her family and friends. The Coast Guard even brought in a helicopter to use FLIR thermal imaging and night vision to find her, but were unsuccessful. The search team utilized aerial support wherever the ground was too dangerous for a search dog, picked up her scent near the Mount Roberts Trailhead parking lot after a few days. But that was it. The search lasted only 4 days before the state troopers called it off, much to the dismay of Bice's loved ones. The searchers had covered so much ground and double-checked everywhere that they were confident she was not there. Over the next few months, occasional leads would turn up and give them hope, such as a hiker who reported a bear and a decaying odor, but nothing ever panned out. Some groups conducted additional search attempts around the trail and the abandoned mineshafts nearby, but never found any evidence suggesting Bice's presence. They have combed through that trailhead so often that it is surprising they have not been able to find anything. The police and troopers explained that Bice might have gotten lost or injured in an area inaccessible to ground searchers. Another theory is that she was attacked by an animal, although they found no evidence of that. Another idea was that she was a victim of foul play. Her car was at the trailhead, but did she even make it up onto the trail? The police never managed to find information about Sharon Boyce's disappearance, so it remains an open case 7 years later. Sylvia App's baffling disappearance. On July 8, 2014, Sylvia Apps departed on a 5-day solo hike of Vancouver's Island Strathcona Park in British Columbia, Canada. The 69-year-old left at 11 a.m. and began her trek in Paradise Meadows near Mount Washington. Her family and friends expected her to return around 4 p.m. on July 13th, but unfortunately she went missing. Searchers managed to find her belongings, but no trace of Sylvia Apps. Her family never heard from her again. The Strathcona Provincial Park is the oldest in British Columbia and the most significant on Vancouver Island. Its wilderness covers over 600,000 acres and has the tallest mountains on the island. The park is rugged and filled with waterfalls, glaciers, lakes, and forests, making it an ideal habitat for unique native wildlife. Apps was an experienced hiker and fully equipped for her trek with navigation and emergency equipment. The last sighting of her was on July 11th, just south of Castle Crack Mountain. Her case baffled search teams because they had never doubted the rescue operation where they discovered only the belongings. When Sylvia Apps did not return on the expected date, her family quickly reported her as missing. Various search and rescue teams and organizations totaling about 170 searches. The ground teams focused on areas in the park that APPS would most likely have traveled through and utilized helicopters for additional aerial support. The Comox Valley Ground Search and Rescue, or CVEGSAR, confirmed that APPS signed into the register for Castle Crag Mountain Summit on July 10th. Later that month, they discovered her backpack in a different location containing all her. The CVEGSAR scaled the search back after a week, explaining that APPS would unlikely be able to travel far without supplies in the heat and rugged terrain. They believed that expanding the search coverage was a waste of time. APPS hiking route is popular, so if there were clues, it would not take long for someone to discover it and resume the search. Her family did not stop searching, though. The search and rescue team suspect that APPS suffered from an injury or medical emergency and could not get help. She was hiking during summer with extreme heat, so it is possible that she suffered from heat stroke and was unable to think rationally and wandered off instead of waiting for rescue. It is now 7 years later and Sylvia Amps is still missing. So what do you make of these three mysteries? Our oceans are some of the most interesting places on our planet, mainly because various regions are unexplored. This leaves a huge number of artifacts lying beneath them that humans haven't seen in hundreds of thousands of years. Different archaeological discoveries have been made under our oceans that have caused us to reevaluate our history and what our ancestors were capable of. Different ancient cities have been found beneath the waves, not only showing us that we still have a lot to learn, but also showing that whole civilizations could be submerged. The most recent discovery that's been made using NASA's satellite is this strange object that appears to be moving beneath the ocean floor. Interestingly, a similar object was found a while back, but this one appears to have turned around 90 degrees on the seafloor. Taking measurements will show you that this structure is massive. It measures in at 21.45 kilometers, or 13.3 miles in length. What people can't seem to explain, though, is how such a large object is able to do a 90-degree turn. Not only that, but it's also gone on to travel for a few miles after this. Some UFO believers also find it interesting that at the end of this trail, you can see what looks like a disc. This shape is synonymous with UFOs, being one of the most commonly shaped UFOs out there. One believer said the following: "This photograph is interesting because not only can we see what looks like a massive skid mark, but we can also see what appears to be a UFO at the end. Or should I say a USO? These USOs are not as common as UFOs, but there's debate within the community whether these types of crafts are the same. UFOs are seen around large bodies of water, and USOs have been reported on a number of occasions coming out of the ocean. So some researchers have said that UFOs have the ability to go in and out of the water, or some think that the two are different." End quote. It's interesting to see an object at the end of what appears to be a skid mark. Normally these features don't have anything at the end. And when first viewing this photograph, it does look like this object could have caused the large skid mark behind it. What's strange about this, though, is that those who have seen the images have also noticed that the areas above and below the structure look to be blurred out, saying that is it possible that NASA have gone in and done this themselves? It's known that NASA touch up or edit photographs before they're released to the public. This could be because when we're talking about Google Earth, certain regions need to be blurred out for security reasons. There's a few places that you can't view due to them being top secret. This can include things like government buildings or top secret locations that are off limits to the public. But why then would they go out of their way to blur something in the ocean? Theorists who spend time looking at these images have given their ideas as to why they would do this. One person said the following: "It's strange when you find a structure of interest in the ocean, only to find out that it's been blurred out. And isn't it a coincidence that it seems to be blurred out at the exact point where there seems to be something of interest? In terms of these objects, it's always blurred towards the top and bottom of the trails, meaning that we can't see if there's any more of these objects nearby. Various times NASA has been seen doing this, but all it does is make us question what they're trying to hide." End quote. This photograph also reminded some of the mysterious Baltic Sea anomaly that was discovered a few years back. The Baltic Sea anomaly has a 60-meter diameter and can be found lying on the floor of the northern Baltic Sea. It was discovered by Peter Lindberg, Dennis Asberg, and their Swedish OceanX diving team, and this was back in June 2011. The team made this discovery while they were looking for an old shipwreck. As they passed over the objects, though, they received a mysterious reading. They'd never seen anything like this before, and were very excited by what this object could potentially be. The group have described themselves as individuals who locate underwater treasures and bring it back to its former glory. They specifically specialized in underwater and historic artifacts. According to OceanX, the anomaly is around 3 to 4 meters thick and has an approximate diameter of 60 meters. Interestingly, this large object is said to be sitting on a thick 8-meter-tall pillar, and this can be found at around 85 to 90 meters. One thing the team have noted, though, is that the visibility is really bad, and although 90 meters doesn't sound deep, it's really hard to see anything when you're down there. The team reported that on one of their first expeditions, they started to experience some malfunctions in their equipment. They didn't think much of it, but as they passed the object, everything started to work as normal again. Thinking this was just a one-off, they then went back over the object, and once again their equipment stopped working. This has caused the team to speculate that this object is giving off some kind of electromagnetic field. They've also tested this a variety of times, and every time they do this, their equipment stops working. Professional diver Stefan Hageboom said the following: "Anything electric out there, and the satellite phone as well, start working when we was above the object. When we got around 200 meters away, it turned on again. And when we went back over the object, it didn't work." End quote. The team explored the object for a second time, and what they found only caused more questions. As the divers approached the object, they could see what appeared to be a dark staircase leading into the object. Interestingly, tests were sent off to try and determine what the object was made of. Steve Weiner said that according to his tests, the object was not a geological formation, and further said the structure was made from metals which nature could not reproduce herself. The OceanX team further said that the craft looked even bigger when they were down there. Interestingly, while down there, they said they could see what appeared to be a trail behind it. This is also backed up from the sonar images. This has only led to people suggesting that whatever this object is came to a stop by crashing. These skid marks can easily be seen on the ocean floor and baffled the team when they first saw them. Outside of the object on the surface, the researchers have also reported seeing unusual carvings, almost like unnatural-looking shames. The object sits at a depth of 90 meters, and water in the area is always murky, factors that make it virtually impossible to film or photograph the site. So what do you make of this interesting object seen at the bottom of the ocean? And what do you think it is? The USA is a home to millions of people and to hundreds of national parks. These spectacular places hold years of history and are the destination for many hikers, tourists, and more. But not everything is as it seems. These national parks have been home to mysterious disappearances and some strange discoveries over the years, with so many questions left unanswered. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 fascinating cases of mysterious discoveries and disappearances. Educator helps rescue man lost in Santa Fe National Park for nearly 2 weeks. This first mysterious discovery took place less than a year ago in August 2020. Hiking is a common pastime, especially in the USA where there is an abundance of stunning national parks and hiking trails. Something you would never think you would find on a hiking trail would be what John Utsi found when he was hiking in Santa Fe National Forest. Hiking with his 2 children, John Utsi set out on a normal hike as he had many times before. However, this time was different. They began to hear noises as they were a few miles into the hike. After a few minutes, they realized it was in fact a man calling for help nearby. In total, it took a reported 20 whole minutes of back and forth shouting until they eventually found the man. Just off a steep hillside was a visibly injured and shaken man who continued to tell Utsi and his children that he had been stuck there for 2 weeks. Describing the lost man, Utsi recalled some physical details. His lips were incredibly chapped and bleeding. His tongue had swelled up, and not only was he visibly gaunt, he was barely making sense and was clearly delirious from the time he had spent lost. Leaving all the food and water they had with the man, they began the hike back to get him. 3 miles later, John Utsi informed the relevant authorities, and firefighters from Santa Fe were on the scene within the matter of an hour. Utsi provided the GPS location of where they found the lost man, and the firefighters went to fight him. Unfortunately, this is not where the story ends. After 8 hours of continuous searching, the man could not be found, and the search that day was reluctantly called off. Unable to just sit by whilst he knew the lost man was still out there and not in good shape at all, Utsi took it upon himself and set out on the same hike to try and find him. After backtracking to where he was the previous day, Utsi located the man for the second time and immediately called the authorities. Around 4 to 5 hours later, rescue crews were on scene. One member of the rescue crew described the lost man as near the end, and it is reported that he went over a week without any food and managed to survive using his filtered water bottle in the creek nearby. The lost survivor is now recovering successfully in a hospital in Santa Fe. Timothy Tim Barnes' disappearance. The USA's national parks are notorious for mysterious disappearances. There are literally hundreds of missing persons cases across practically all national parks in the USA. United States national parks have had many disappearances in which the circumstances are so mysterious that there have been entire groups and websites set up to try and solve these mysteries. The Missing 411 is the name given to the group of people that have disappeared in mysterious circumstances in national parks, large rural areas, or a large reserve. What is bizarre about the Missing 411 is that these disappearances take place in busy national parks with a lot of foot traffic. So for someone to disappear in these busy areas without a trace is mysterious. So we are going to be talking about a specific disappearance that has been classified into the Missing 411, and that individual is Timothy Tim Barnes. Back in July 1988, Timothy Barnes left his California home at around 9 a.m. and had initially planned on hiking the Polydome Lakes of Yosemite National Park and returning home later the same day. After he did not return home that evening, his friends waited until the morning to report him missing and informed Yosemite Park rangers. Over the next 7 days, an extensive search of the area was carried out. There were over 70 people, a team of dogs, and 2 helicopters. It is very hard to believe that after that amount of time with that many resources, that there was not one shred of evidence relating to Timothy Barnes. The fact that absolutely nothing was found is bizarre. The reported area in which Timothy Barnes went missing has been an area in which at least 3 other people have reportedly disappeared, without a trace. This has led to people labeling the area a hotspot and have pointed out a geographical correlation between these specific disappearances. Disappearance of Paul Braxton Fugate. Similar to the previous entry, the disappearance of Paul Braxton Fugate is also part of the Missing 411. Born in 1938, Paul was a park ranger at Arizona's Cherokee National Monument, and a dedicated one too. He was known for answering visitors' questions and making different plant lists and trail guides. Paul set off on a trail. He had told an aide that he was going to do a trail and that if he wasn't back by 4:30 p.m., they should notify the relevant people. At approximately 8 p.m., the National Monument Superintendent was notified, and him, along with 2 others, carried out a quick search, but to no avail. The following morning, the county sheriff's office was notified, and a search team of 22 people and a dog set off to search for Paul. After 2 weeks, the official search and rescue operation was called off. Paul's partner, Dodie, has continued to organize volunteer searches for Paul years after his disappearance, but not a shred of evidence relating to the case has been found. Then, in 2017, a retired detective decided to start investigating the cold case by going back around the area and re-interviewing witnesses and sources. That same year, there was a new lead, and the park itself put a special agent on the case. But same as before, the lead turned cold. In 2018, the park raised the reward for information to up to $60,000 from the initial $20,000. The case is still open, and the relevant people are continuing to investigate the disappearance of Paul Braxton Fugate. There have been many theories and speculation in regards to what actually happened to Paul and where he could be, but as of right now, his whereabouts remain a mystery. But what do you make of these three mysterious cases across the USA? In recent years, various interesting reports have come out of Russia. One that many aren't aware of is a strange object that could be seen hovering above western Siberia. Conflicting reports were made when the object was sighted, with some saying that the object looks like an unknown craft, while others were saying this thing came out of a wormhole. Other residents in the region were saying out their claims, such as they could see this thing firing a type of laser, and that this was creating an opening in the sky. This caused some to say that this object was creating the wormhole itself. One eyewitness said the following: the fireball emerged out of the sky over the city of Omsk in western Siberia and was spotted as far as Kazakhstan. There was claims that it was an alien visit. Photographs taken from a car on Tuesday evening shows the object hovering over Superstore IKEA. It was also seen in various cities close by. Astronomers at the planetarium of the Siberian State University of Geosystems and Technologies confirmed that it wasn't a comet, but have not ruled out if it was a meteor. Those in the region said that Siberia isn't a stranger to meteors, and that since living there they've seen several. However, they said that this object wasn't like anything that they've seen before. One resident went on to report that this object looked like an eyeball, and that it was flying around in the sky at fast speeds. It would then suddenly stop and flash a light in the sky. This light would then open up something close by, with locals saying that this opening looked like a portal. Another local pointed out that this thing seemed to be flying around in the sky, and it didn't drop to the ground. Some who didn't see the event live but have seen the images suggested that it's actually a rocket launch, saying that it matches other failed rocket launches that had been seen in the region. The locals, though, seemed convinced that this wasn't what they were seeing. As of right now, due to conflicting reports, the event remains a mystery. Although these types of events and encounters sound unbelievable, this isn't the only place where this type of unidentified flying object has been observed. One of the places that's known to have these types of UFOs is that of Skinwalker Ranch. Skinwalker Ranch has been a hotbed of UFO activity. It's one of the most common things that is seen here. However, before it became known as the Skinwalker Ranch, it was simply known as a ranch where the Sherman family lived in the 1990s. The Shermans tried to reach out to newspapers and other media outlets to explain their experience of the bizarre things they'd witnessed on the ranch. These tales included the mysterious vanishing of cows, crop circle-like patterns in the pasture and soils, along with countless UFO sightings. According to legend, a werewolf sighting also took place on the Skinwalker Ranch, where a farmer claims he saw the wolf attacking one of his calves. The farmer fired at the wolf without any response. The farmer then fired another shot. This time the wolf let go of the calf, but stood upright with no sign of distress. After a third shot, the wolf walked away casually, still unharmed by the multiple bullers. While living on the ranch, one family experienced multiple cattle disappearances, crop circles, hearing voices calling from nowhere, objects moving by themselves, and seeing strange birds and other animals on the property. Some people have even witnessed thunderbirds on the property. The thunderbird is a cryptozoological creature associated with large bird-like animals. These creatures are believed to be huge in size. Many people over the years have claimed to have witnessed them and say their giant size is unlike anything they've seen before. Terry Sherman said the following while staying here: "We would see these 100-foot circular openings appear in the air. It was like 4 orange-colored doorways that would spiral open. Looking through a high-powered scope, the Shermans watched as smaller crafts would emerge from the hovering portals, fly around the property, and then re-enter the doorways. The Shermans described the stealthier smaller crafts as being around 60 to 40 feet in length. The smaller crows looked like they were a flying grid. They also appeared to emit spikes of light which hit the ground. Another eerie phenomena soon began to plague the Shermans. The family started noticing glowing blue balls moving around the property. The balls gave off a cracking sound, seemed intelligently controlled, and could either hover or move unbelievably fast. One evening the Shermans watched as a blue ball approached one of their horses. The light hovered within a foot of the horse's face, which spooked it immediately. From a distance of 10 feet, they shined a flashlight on the blue globe and it retreated. It then approached Terry as if inspecting him. Terry described it as a glass ball around the size of a baseball, which appeared to contain two blue fluids which intermingled with each other. These blue UFOs have been seen for decades now, but people can't seem to agree on what they are. Some say they're drone-like crafts related to UFOs, while others have said they're energy boards that are under intelligent control. Since then, other people have carried out experiments on Skinwalker Ranch and have also seen similar things. Some have described the area as being aware and that when you try to record these sightings, they suddenly stop. It's as if Skinwalker Ranch is a lie. As of right now, those who've investigated this region have said there's something going on. What that thing is yet to be explained. So what do you make of this mysterious object that was seen above Russia? Do you think it was an unidentified flying object? Or was this something man-made? The year 2020 unveiled a host of new research opportunities and discoveries, despite them being somewhat overshadowed by recent events. Whilst most of us stayed locked up inside, plenty of research continued and plenty of breakthroughs were made in the outside world, meaning plenty of findings slipped under the radar. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we will be placing the spotlight on 3 recent discoveries that you may have missed throughout the chaos of 2020. Giant bat found in the Philippines. The internet has given rise to yet another viral post, as a Reddit post sparks discussion around a human-sized bat found within the Philippines. A couple of years ago, Reddit user Sakandez posted a picture of a gigantic fruit bat in their back garden in the Philippines. It did not take long for the internet to spread this picture around, with many jumping to claim it was trick photography or Photoshop, could think of to deny the existence of a potentially frightening creature. This post picked up traction and internet points once again in the June of 2020. With a Twitter user writing, "Remember when I told you all about the Philippines having human-sized bats? Yeah, this is what I was talking about. The particular photo in circulation does give the bat some extra size, with the perspective and camera angles used making the bat seem much larger than it likely is. However, the suspected bat species found by user Sirkuns is definitely larger than the average microbat that may spring to your mind. Flying foxes, given their name due to their facial shape, features and ears resembling those of a fox, do have human-sized wingspans, with the largest species of flying fox bat having a wingspan that can reach up to 1.7 meters or 5.5 feet. Despite their large wingspan being rather intimidating, this creature has a relatively small body, barely larger than 30 centimeters, approximately 11.8 inches. Despite the clever angle initially, the original poster of the photo on Reddit added additional images from a variety of angles, proving authenticity and giving credibility to this impressive sighting. The second image depicted the bat yawning as it woke up from a midday nap. Much like the bats we may be more familiar with, flying foxes are also nocturnal. With the internet hosting a world of people playing detective, the specific species titles soon came flooding in, with various posts adding their believed name to a caption, describing this bat as a golden-crowned flying fox. This has been discredited, however, with many pointing out the absence of the so-called golden crown, the yellow tuft of fur on the bat's head. Many think the public have been so quick to name the internet-famous back garden crashing bat a golden-crowned flying fox due to the great size. As the golden-crowned bat is amongst the largest bats in the world, belonging to the family named megabats, which usually reside in Africa, India, Asia, and Oceania. The new conclusion that appears to be taking precedence is that this creature is a large flying fox biologically named Pteropus vampirus, another member of the megabat family. Unfortunately, in the Philippines, Nearly all varieties of flying foxes are labeled threatened species due to their habitats being destroyed and some people continuing to hunt these bats as a source of food. These bats are wonderful creatures, and whilst they may play the villainous vampire role on the big screen, these adorable animals need protecting. Hopefully, the discovery of these new bat species to much of the world through social media will help boost their cause. Hubble finds Betelgeuse's mysterious dimming is due to a traumatic outburst. The red supergiant star Betelgeuse, part of the Orion constellation and the namesake of the hit 80s Beetlejuice film character, has been dimming in an unexplained and unexpected manner, leaving a cloud of dust emitting from the surface of the star, according to observations made by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope beginning in 2019. Researchers have suggested that this dust cloud was first formed due to superhot plasma being released from a large convection cell passing through the star's atmosphere and out into the much colder outer layers. This then cooled down in the outer layers before turning into grains of dust. The current belief is that the dust cloud was blocking the light from the star, making it appear dimmer when looking on. By the April of 2020, Betelgeuse was returned to its normal state, though in February of 2020 the reduced brightness of the star was visible from Earth with the naked eye. 1/4 of the surface had been blocked with the believed dust, though at the peak of the blocking the brightness of the star was actually reduced by more than 2/3 of its usual shine. The most commonly believed theory is the dust cloud, though others have suggested a star spot covering the visible surface. Scientists have been tracing the images captured by Hubble in the lead-up to the dimming, looking back from January 2019. The ultraviolet light spectroscopic observations of Betelgeuse captured by Hubble are being studied to find clues as to what exactly caused the dimming. The analysis of the star is part of an ongoing 3-year study looking to research the variations in the atmosphere of the star. On a 420-day cycle, the ultraviolet light sensitivity allowed researchers to probe the surface of the star, which is not visible without the Hubble's equipment, due to the 20,000 degree Fahrenheit surface temperature. The hot, dense material continued to move beyond the visible surface of the star, eventually to millions of miles away. The outburst of material, eventually cooling to form a dust, has an unknown route. There have been some suggestions that the pulsation cycle of Betelgeuse, which did maintain regularity, has aided the perceived dimming as changes in the velocity of the gas upon Betelgeuse's surface were seen to be fluctuated as measured by the Stellar Activity and Automated Telescope from the Leibniz Institute for Astrophysics. Regardless as to the true cause of the dimming from spring 2020 onwards, Betelgeuse seems to have returned to its normal bright state, the atmosphere having returned to a visibly normal state too. A massive detached coral reef has been discovered in Australia's Great Barrier Reef, measuring 1,640 feet in height. In October of 2020, a large coral reef was unexpectedly discovered north of the Great Barrier Reef. This new reef reaches 500 meters, half a kilometer or 1,640 feet in height, making it taller than the Empire State Building, reminding us just how little we know of our oceans. A team of scientists were creating a 3D mapping of the seafloor in the area surrounding Australia's Great Barrier Reef. This mission was predicted to take a year. The team conducted their mission from aboard a research vessel owned by California nonprofit group, the Schmidt Ocean Institute. From here, they were able to use an underwater robot called Sebastian to move around the reef, giving them the ability to form their 3D map. The discovery was shared via a YouTube livestream captured by Sebastian. Executive Director of Schmidt Ocean Institute, Dr. Jyotika Vermani, stated that the discovery shows how serious the world is beyond our coastline. Scientists are hopeful that the data gained from mapping and the underwater imagery collected by Sebastian will contribute nicely to developing our understanding of the newly found reef, as well as how it works in the bigger picture of the Great Barrier Reef. World Heritage Area. It is no secret that within the last few decades the Great Barrier Reef has been suffering, and this is said to be because of warmer seas and the climate crisis as a whole. This has resulted in the loss of coral life, led to great amounts of other marine life moving, and has increased the rate of growth for algae as well as other possible contaminants. Despite this decline in health of the Great Barrier Reef, the great it remains of vital importance, home to 1,500 species of fish, 411 hard corals, and many other animals and marine life alike. In 1981, the Great Barrier Reef became a World Heritage Site, demonstrating its scientific importance. Yet, since 1995, more than half of the corals have been lost due to increased temperature in the sea. This decline in the well-being of the Great Barrier Reef makes the discovery of the new reef all the more exciting, with it being the first to have been stumbled across since the 1800s. The outskirts of the Great Barrier Reef are also known to be home to 7 other tall reefs, the most notable of which is close to Rain Island, which contains the globe's most important nesting area for green sea turtles. The newly discovered reef is not contained within the main portion of the Great Barrier Reef, meaning it has been classified as a distinct and separate reef. However, it is attached and bedded into the ocean floor by North Queensland. We have also found that the new reef is home to new organisms related to jellyfish and coral, siphonophores, and other deep-sea organisms, with many being bioluminescent. Over the year-long mission, 30 new species have been discovered, proving this research to have been worthwhile and valuable. Whether it is the internet stumbling across an unacknowledged, endangered species, physicists finding the answers behind strange astronomical events, or uncovering new areas of our oceans, we are learning more about our world with each passing day and have plenty more discoveries around the course. But what do you make of these 3 recent 2020 discoveries?